Speaker, and I want to thank the gentleman from Alabama for yielding, and frankly, I want to thank him for the wonderful work he provided as a member of the Armed Services Committee to bring this legislation forward to the floor today. And I also want to quickly associate myself with my friend from Massachusetts' remarks about the authorization. I think he's absolutely right on that issue. We've worked together on that, and it is something that ought to happen. It is an institutional question of whether or not we retain our war-making authority. So he's done admirable work in that area. The bill itself, which I support, and of course the rule and the underlying legislation, is a very important piece of legislation. I want to commend our friends on the Armed Services Committee for working in a bipartisan fashion, first to make sure they stop the erosion of end strength of the military. It is an absolutely critical thing to do. Could not have happened had they not worked together and made some tough decisions. Second, I want to point out all the reforms in this legislation, procurement reforms in particular. They've gone well beyond simply appropriating money for the military. They've done some important work to put important tools in our hands that I think going forward will save billions of dollars. I want to also commend them for fully funding a pay raise for the men and women in uniform. That's an important thing. The amount of money, 2.1% increase, is relatively modest, but appropriate. But the more important thing is the signal it sends to the men and women who put themselves between us and harm's way, and I want to thank the gentleman for his role in that. Finally, I also want to pick up one of the points that my friend from Alabama made that I couldn't agree with more. As important and as good as this legislation is, if we do not marry it with the money that it takes to actually implement it, we're making the mistake of a lifetime. Now, in my opinion, we could do that literally this year if we did an omnibus. But if we fail to do that and we do a CR, my friend is exactly right. We should act as rapidly as possible in January to make sure that we actually put the money together with the excellent authorization work that's done here. Otherwise, we simply undercut all the good work of the Armed Services Committee. So this is something that we need to focus on. We need to make sure the authorization is important, but if we don't appropriate the money, a lot of the hard work that was done on the Armed Services Committee will be for naught, and it'll be for naught until we actually make that decision. We shouldn't wait till the end of April or the end of May. We ought to get it done as quickly as we can. I'd like to get it done before we go home, but if we can't do that, we certainly ought to get it done as quickly as we get back. But all that aside, again, I want to congratulate both sides of the aisle. This is a model of bipartisanship. My friend from Massachusetts mentioned some other measures in here with regard to Russia that I think are absolutely also appropriate. I applaud their inclusion. And I would just urge every member to support the rule and certainly to vote for the underlying legislation. With that, Mr.